From that point, my mind was completely blown by just how much is involved with keeping horses sound and comfortable. It's really powerful training, and I think it's something the horse world we're very behind in, and it just makes everything so much safer.
We've got another Equitana educator as a guest today at Horse Chats, and this one is Tanya French, and she's from Holistic Horse Education, which is based in the Yarra Valley in Victoria. So Tanya's a hoof care professional, and she runs a small rescue and rehab, teaching maintenance trimming for owners, and she does positive reinforcement training. She's also, like all good horse people and any good student, she's furthered her education with nutrition, bodywork and behavioural studies. So we're going to talk to Tanya about that today. But before I do, I'd just like to remind you about the podcast is brought to you by International Horse College, and the mission of International Horse College is to improve the welfare of horses around the world through the safe education of their riders, handlers and trainers. So have a look at the wide variety of horse courses incorporating horse welfare and safety around horses at internationalhorsecollege.com, and then contact them to speak to one of the friendly staff about a course that you're most interested in. Internationalhorsecollege.com. Contact details are on the website. Registered Training Organisation 31352. Now, Tanya's going to talk to us about horse health, or hoof care in particular. She's been around horses all her life, starting at the Pony Club, and she started with traditional horse methods. And as I said, she's also speaking at Equitana. Now, Tanya, are you there? How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm well. So, Tanya, just so that we can get to know you a little bit better, have you got something that you might say to yourself, say to horse owners, people that you're teaching, just something that can either inspire you or, some basic rules that you can help others with?
My most common one at the moment being spring is they haven't found it until they do, because, every horse is a bit of a ticking time bomb in some ways in that degree, and I think it's just good practice to be preventing instead of always waiting for it to happen. So I think that's the base of my business, is that we're trying to prevent these things happening. We want the horse to be thriving instead of, waiting for things to happen because we haven't tried to prevent them.
Now, just going through a little bit of history, I think that, you're obviously passionate about feet and care of feet, and saying something like that, that's just, a lot of people just don't understand basics, and sometimes you've just got to keep reminding them until they really can get to understand and not just discount it because they've got no previous experience, and especially previous experience with their own horse. Yeah. So you started off at Pony Club, lots of people start off in Pony Club in Australia. So tell us a bit about how that has taken you through to having an interest in hoof care.
So I did start off in Pony Club, and I found that there came a certain point where I started to see things differently, in that the syllabus is much more up to date now, but when I started, there were a lot of things that weren't up to date, and a lot of the information we were getting wasn't that relevant anymore, especially for so many of the ponies that are in Pony Club. A lot of the information was based more on racehorses, especially the feeding and the hoof care things. So I think I sort of got interested in probably the behaviour side of things first, and that sort of led me down the hoof care route. But I actually had a pony that I was riding, a Highland pony, and he was tripping a lot, and he actually fell on me at one point in cross country, and we ended up getting a corrective farrier to come out and put shoes on him, and we had endless problems with that because the shoes were just coming off. I think we had them off 3 times in a week because he was overreaching, and it just made me, for the first time ever, I had one of those horses where you go, I don't know what to do with him, and I started researching things.
I was going to say, because sometimes the horses that you don't know what to do with, are the ones that change your thought pattern altogether. So you think
Exactly.
that they're too much of a challenge, but if you say no, I'm going to work this out. So long as you don't get yourself into a dangerous situation, but if you can
Yeah.
work it out and work around them, you'll learn so much. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it definitely for me that's what started me on this path, because I was actually going to do an apprenticeship with the farrier who was working on him. He's a fabulous farrier, does a really good job, but it just wasn't working for this horse. So it just made me go, why isn't it working? I don't understand feet. I don't understand what's going on with it. No understanding that the hoof is such a complex structure, and it has nerves, it has feeling, and this horse had no proprioception. That was why he was tripping. The back of his foot was completely undeveloped. So I ended up on the internet and found the diploma of equine podiatry, and we rang up and they just happened to have a place that had opened up, and because the course was completely booked, I think for the next year or so, 2 years or something, and it was just luck with the timing. I guess it was meant to be, and yeah, so that got me in there, and from that point, my mind was completely blown by just how much is involved with keeping horses sound and comfortable, and that led me again. So we covered all of those basics within the course. So along with your hoof care, your nutrition, your body work, training, all those sorts of things. But from the little that we did in the course, comparing that to the in-depth like hoof side, I had to know more. So I had to just go out and find courses, find the information to understand those side of things better, so I can do better work with the horses that I'm trimming.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. So tell us then about how body work, nutrition, training, just horse behaviour, how that affects the horse's hoof. Because it's all relevant, if you think of a holistic horse, but tell us
Yeah.
how it's relevant.
So the nutrition is absolutely massive in horse hoof health. If we haven't got the diet right, and I was actually listening to one of your older podcasts before, the name has left me right now, but she did a wonderful talk on gut health and inflammation within the body, and it just made me think again, like how much what we feed is so important, because it's not only about how we think of we are what we eat, energy levels and that kind of thing, but also the correct minerals, balanced diet, low sugar, high fiber diet is going to get you that strong healthy hoof with a tight lamina connection. We're trying to keep the diet very low inflammatory, just trying to keep the laminitis at bay and grow a nice, strong, sound connected hoof. So that diet side is really important. And then we look at the body side, because the hooves are so directly related to the body. If you have a horse that has a sore lower back and they're standing with their hind end underneath them, they're going to be wearing off their heels, growing their toes longer, and then that stance perpetuates, throughout the body. It makes it worse. So you've started off with maybe a sore back and it's changed the hooves, but then the hoof stance changes the body more, and they kind of bounce back off each other and making each other worse and worse. So if we're fixing the feet, we need to fix the body as well, and vice versa, and you can't fix one without the other. The training side of things, if we don't have a horse who is, so there's two aspects to the training. It would be looking at a horse who is comfortable within their body. So are we training them in a way that is helping them build the correct muscle? And are we training them to actually pick up their hooves and stand quietly and calmly for the farrier, so we can do the best job that we can do? That's what my Equitana talk is on, is teaching them how to, stand for the farrier, for the vet, anything like that, so we can actually work on them in a way that's the most effective possible and have the animal safe and calm.
Yep. And that's on Sunday, is it?
Sunday, yeah.
Yep. Okay. And you're just doing the one chat, aren't you?
Yeah, one talk. taking my two little ponies to demonstrate. So, yeah.
Now, as well as that, you've got a rescue and rehabilitation centre. Tell us about that a little bit more. And the other thing is, too, which I think is really important, because a lot of people want to do, like we all want to be involved. We all want to be connected with horses. And some people feel like there's a connection. They want to do some rescue and rehabilitation, but it's expensive, because you have up to 25, and just keeping 25 horses is not always easy. But tell us about the clinic. Tell us a little bit about how you pay for it, because that's a big deal if you want to do something like that, and how you've made it work.
So it's one of those never-ending problems that us horsey people have. Is we started off with the one. Well, to start off with, I've always, growing up, we weren't rich. I always had those horses that were the problem horse. They were free, mostly behavioural issues, but looking back now, I can see that they also had other issues going on. So we always had that sort of thing of, we've always got the rescue horse or the problem horse. So it slowly built as my trimming business, got going. We were able to buy a property, and then the horses accumulated as they do. Like, every week, anybody that's a horse professional will know you get offered horses all the time.
You know
Um,
what the trouble is there? The more acres you've got, the more you're
exactly.
collecting. Yeah. How many
Yeah.
acres do you have there, Tanya?
We're not on a lot. We're only on 17, but it actually suits quite well because we've got track set up and a sort of equicentral hybrid setup, so we get a lot of laminitis ponies, so we can have them off the grass, and they don't get that grass at all. They're just on hay 24/7. If we get a good summer where it dries off, they're able to go in and have sort of standing hay for a couple of hours in the morning, but predominantly they're not getting the grass at all. So we are preventing, they've had laminitis in the past and we don't want it to happen again, so they just don't go near it. But yeah, so I think in, like, me, for myself, being able to afford these things, because I'm like, I can trim their feet and I can do a lot of the rehab things, I've been able to kind of cut costs there a lot while still doing a good job by the animal. That's one thing. Like, I do try and get owners, if they can't afford to do, if you can't afford to do a 2 week trim, like, do that in between trim when you're rehabbing a horse, learn to do it yourself. So you're still getting the professional to check your work at a normal 4 to 6 week space. But if you can learn to do that in between yourself, then you're going to make a much bigger difference to the animal if you're doing some of that maintenance. You can also, so looking at feed, there's plenty of ways you can cut down feed bills. So getting the right feed, so you're not spending a fortune on supplements that might not be working. We actually, with our hay, we do a call out for people that want their paddocks slashed, and we'll pay to have them baled. So we're only paying for the cut price rather than, paying double or more to buy it from a hay supplier. Um, yeah, it's not cheap. Like, the vet and dental costs are always a big one, and the feed costs are definitely a big one. But you can sort of pick, if you want to be able to help an animal, there's a degree of, if you're going to go out and buy a very emaciated horse that needs a lot of food, that's clearly probably going to cost you a lot more to rehabilitate than, say, if you took on a smaller pony that just needed a lot of handling. So there's different ways you can look at it and still be able to do a good thing by the animal, depending on your financial. Um,
And you take on a few unhandled brumbies as well. How did you get into that? And how do you make that?
so I did the first Australian Brumby Challenge. That was my first experience with Brumbies, and I fell in love with them. They're amazing. And I had one unhandled horse prior to that, and he wasn't a good lead up to Brumbies because I didn't realise what wild was until I got a Brumby. But yeah, so we do a bit of work with the Victorian Brumby Association. I have 3 Brumbies here at the moment. 2 are mine, and one is probably almost mine because she's one of the wildest we've ever had. She's probably been here around a year, and she's still slowly learning to trust us, just have us around. She was really, really traumatized. Whereas other Brumbies, within a week you've got the halter on them and you're starting to lead them around, pick up hooves, and they're just pick it up really quickly. But I think she also had trauma as well. She didn't just have that wild background.
So just, and sort of going back to laminitis, on a daily basis, we can talk about just generally with hooves anyway, on a daily basis, what sort of care should the horse owner be doing for a horse who may have had laminitis, or even just they haven't had laminitis, but they just want to know what's the best way on a daily basis to look after a horse's hooves?
So your first thing is probably you need to learn the symptoms. So what you're looking for. So you're looking at the appearance of the hoof itself. So there's a certain shape to a laminitic hoof. We get those rings, which can be inflammation. That's going to give you an idea of whether your horse has had issues in the past. Also, when you pick up the hoof, we're going to look for a flattened sole. We're going to look for a thin sole. Just any changes to that hoof that make it look not quite right. We're going to learn how to feel for a digital pulse. So that's the pulse that you feel down in the pastern. We're going to watch our horses move. So how do they move on soft ground versus hard ground? How do they turn? Can they trot a circle comfortably? All those sort of things. Just knowing what normal looks like. If we've got them tied up to do something, like saddling up and they're standing on hard ground like concrete, do they shift around? Do they wiggle? If we're lifting the hooves to clean them out, are they lifting them comfortably, or are they not wanting to? Are they not wanting to stand on the opposite hoof? All those sort of things we can start to learn to see ourselves. Once we've learned how to recognize those things, then we can go into our management side of things. So looking at our diet, is it low sugar and high fiber? What is our grass like? Are we grazing on short stressed pasture? Are we grazing on species like rye? The same thing goes for the hay. Like, what sort of hay are you feeding? Are you feeding a cereal hay like oaten or rye or clover that's going to be much higher in sugar? Yeah, just looking at all those sort of the dietary side of things. Also making sure if you see any of those signs, to get a vet diagnosis, because a lot of these issues have an underlying pathology that needs to be diagnosed. So usually that would be your Cushing's or your insulin dysregulation. So getting a vet to come out and diagnose them, and even doing that on a yearly basis. So if you have a horse that is suspect, it is recommended that you do those tests yearly just to make sure that everything's ticking along okay. Because again, that goes back to that everything is fine until it's not, and people say nothing has changed, but the horse has aged. Age has changed. So we always need to keep thinking about that, whether, just because the management stayed the same doesn't mean the horse's body has stayed the same.
Something key, I think you said there, is to know what normal looks like, like to know what normal
Yeah.
looks like anytime, whether the horse is healthy, normal, healthy, without showing any signs of distress, and this is not just found, this is a lot of other areas, but also behaviour. What does normal look like behaviour? And if your horse is misbehaving for the vet or the farrier or the dentist, what does normal look like? What should normal look like? Do you have any tips to teach people to know and to prepare their horse for the vet or for the farrier or for the dentist?
So what we do, the cooperative care training is basically we're teaching the horse with positive reinforcement, so that's food. We're teaching them the behaviours that they need to know to have those care procedures done. So it might be, for example, having the farrier come out. What I do with a lot of my clients is some of the clients will actually train the behaviour, and some of the clients maybe haven't trained it, but they might have food ready for the horse. So the horse starts to associate me with good things. And we're very specific about how we use the food. So we don't use treats. We don't have things hidden in pockets. The food is like one big bucket of chaff or a hay net or something that is just there, and it's free choice. They can eat it, and we're not sort of withholding food and creating more anxiety within the animal. And you can use that method for so many things, and it will really change how the horse feels about it. I've got horses where I used to turn up and they'd be like tied up and rearing and absolutely panicking, to now I turn up and they're whinnying and nickering and so excited to see you arrive. So it's some very like simple things like that, especially if you can understand your emotional systems like your body language and calming signals, displacement signals, looking at if the horse is okay with what you're doing. So if you approach that horse and they're eating and they move away, they're not okay with you doing that. So maybe we would go back. We might do some like approach pretend. I have some that are so frightened I can't touch them at the start. I'll pretend to pat them. So I'll kind of pat the air next to them. And we'll do that a few times, and I'll pat and then the owner will feed, and then I'll do a pretend pat and the owner will feed, and we'll repeat that until I'm actually touching the animal. And they go, okay, you can stand next to me, you can touch me, you can lift my leg. And just really breaking it down. And the more you break it down and the more they understand that they're being listened to, the safer and the happy they are. Whereas if you sort of just bulldoze in and don't listen to them, that's when explosions and accidents can happen. I don't know if I went off on a tangent there.
No, no, I think that's good. I think that if people are thinking, right, what can I do here? I think you've given them a good explanation. And I think that, if you want to know more, then go and see Tanya at Equitana. Make sure you look in your program to find all the details. And I think that's great. Tanya, before we go, are there any questions or anything else that you'd like to tell people before we finish off?
I think if people are interested in this, they should have a look at what the zoos are doing. So zoo training is a really, really good one to show you what is possible. So I don't know if you've ever seen any of that yourself, but they've got videos of like lions having blood draws voluntarily. So it's really powerful training, and I think it's something the horse world we're very behind in. And it just makes everything so much safer and more effective. We can do our jobs better if the animal's on board with it as well. So that's a good one to have a look at, just to help you understand what we're actually doing, because I think we are quite ingrained with our pressure and release training, and it's hard to understand and to visualize what force-free and no pressure training would look like. And then, just getting up to on board with your laminitis knowledge, your hoof care knowledge, learning what normal looks like. So if you have a horse and you don't understand what the foot is like I didn't when I had that horse with the issues, I had no idea what was going on. Clearly, you don't have to go and become a hoof care professional, but just get yourself some education so you can make some good informed decisions about what is going on with your horse, and you can go, okay, well, maybe this professional isn't the right one for me, and then you can go, okay, well, I think this person, we could actually really work well together, and my horse is going to benefit from that. And you can make that decision based on proper information rather than just, oh, so and so likes this person. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's great, Tanya. Look, I'm looking forward to catching up with you at Equitana, and I'm sure that many of our listeners will want to catch up with you as well. Thank you for coming on, and we'll chat to you again soon, and we'd like to get you back on the podcast, so thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.